promised land. All will be happy and gay. Come with me.
One of the reasons we set ourselves apart in a Sabbath moment is not to escape from the world, although that at times is pleasant, but rather it's to regain an experience of and to find needed strength in the presence of the Sacred One in which we were all created. And in the process, be reunited with a sense of the whole of creation so that we can then re-immerse ourselves in the world. I'm quoting now from the book Perfume of the Desert. As in all the mature mystical traditions, the aim of the quest of being one with God for the Sufi is not to live in a trance of bliss in God, but to live as a part of God on earth and in time, loving and serving all beings with some small power of God's selfless humility. Many of the greatest Sufi masters, and I would add the greatest spiritual guides across all faith traditions, have not been recluses or hermits, but tailors or potters or small-town businessmen and women who live their supreme realization realistically and humbly at the center of ordinary life. As Abu Sayyid wrote in the 8th century, the perfect mystic is not an ecstatic devotee lost in contemplation of oneness, nor a saintly recluse shunning all commerce with mankind, but the true saint goes in and out amongst the people and eats and sleeps with them and buys and sells in the market and takes place in social intercourse and never forgets God for a single moment. Such true saints become to love what a hand is to a person. They become efficient instruments in reality of the will of God, servants of God, and servants of all beings in and for God. Wherever they are, a light of God is. Whatever they do, God does in them. Their words inspire divine love, and their actions radiate the clarity of divine justice and the generosity of divine mercy. As the mystic Junid wrote of one who is spiritually centered, she is one whose heart keeps pace with her foot. She is entirely present. Her soul is where her body is, and her body where her soul is, and her soul where her foot is. Experiences of God, for me, have been a common occurrence throughout my life. In the midst of the mundane, in the midst of the profane or the supposedly irreligious moments, I have been surprised by the sacred. After one such experience, I penned these words. Early this morning, just as the sun began to peer with a pink blush over the horizon, there was a layer of fog blanketing the ground. It was only 3 feet deep, and the wisps of smokiness acted as if there was some theatrical dry ice machine puffing at stage left. The ethereal mist caused the world, or at least caused the space that I was focused on in that moment, to exude a sense of the holy. I sensed, in that brief encounter of mystical joy, that I would encounter, rather I was encountering the Sacred One. I knew that God was. God is. Those kinds of numinous experiences, and particularly the locations where the mystery is encountered, are what pre-Christians and later Celtic Christians called a thin place. If there is a separation between what is sacred and what is profane, then a thin place is where the veil between the holy and the ordinary is thinnest. It's in that place where God is palpable. Like Da Vinci's Sistine Chapel portrayal of the hands of God and Adam reaching toward each other, a thin place is where we reach out with a curious soul and brush against the divine. Mindy Burgoyne describes thin places as ports in the storm of life, where the pilgrims can move closer to the God they seek, where one leaves that which is familiar and journeys into the divine presence. They are stopping places where men and women are given pause to wonder about what lies beyond the mundane rituals, the grief, trials, and boredom of our day life. They probe to the core of the human heart and open the pathway that leads to satisfying the familiar hungers and yearnings common to all people on earth. The hunger to be connected, to be a part of something greater, to be loved, to find peace. For some, the thin places become the only places where God can be encountered. Like Jacob of A Stairway to Heaven fame, and whom I spoke of a couple of weeks ago, some react to the encounter of the holy by raising and anointing stones and naming the stones Bethel, meaning house of God. Bethel became for Jacob the only place to experience God. In a way, Jacob placed God in a box, and a spiritual encounter became a religious endeavor. For others, the holy is found not only in a place, but within. John O'Donohue, who wrote about the wisdom of Celtic Christianity, made this observation in his work called Anam Cara. For too long we have believed that the divine is outside of us. This belief has strained our longing disastrously. This makes us lonely, since it is human longing that makes us holy. The most beautiful thing about us is our longing. This longing is spiritual and has great depth and wisdom. If you focus on your longing on a faraway divinity, you put an unfair strain on your longing. Thus, it often happens that the longing reaches out toward the distant divine, but because it overstrains itself, it bends back to become cynicism, emptiness, or negativity. This can destroy your sensibility. Yet we do not need to put any strain whatever on our longing. If we believe that the body is the soul and the soul is divine ground, then the presence of the divine is completely here, close with us. Consider the possibility of every place that you are being a thin place. In your waking and your sleeping, in the woods or in your place of work, in your soul and in the soul of everyone you meet. Consider the reality that everywhere you are, God is. God in you, and you in God. Allow me to share a poem penned by Rumi, and to invite you then to meditate this morning on what God is saying to you in this thin place. Know, O beloved, that the world of the command is without direction. No created being is unconnected with God. That connection is indescribable. Because in the Spirit there is no separating and uniting, while our thought cannot think except of separating and uniting. Pursue that which is without separation and union by the aid of a spiritual guide, but the pursuit will not allay your thirst. Still, pursue incessantly if you are far from the source. On the way to God, there are 100 veils. When the one that beholds the wonders of God abandons pride and egotism from contemplating God's work, he will know his proper station and will be silent considering the Maker. Therefore, be dumbfounded, without yea or nay, in order that a litter may come from the divine mercy to carry you. Be then only dumbfounded and distraught, nothing else, that God's aid may come in from before and behind. When you become dumbfounded and crazed and annihilated, you have said with mute eloquence, "Lead me." The mighty shape of God is for terrifying the unbeliever. When you become helpless, God's form is mercy and kindness. Just a thought this morning.